But the only thing that really matters is that we keep going. And that's why it's so great that you guys are here today, and I'm super proud and excited about that. Because our members of Congress need to know this was not a flash-in-the-pan thing. We are not backing down. We are in it for the long haul, and we mean business.
Yes.
We do. We mean business. This is going to be a big week for healthcare. The vote on the ACA replacement may well come on Thursday. We don't really know what's going to happen, but that is a possibility. So we are calling on you to do some things for us. They are listed on your little handout, and I hope you guys have handouts. If you don't, someone is going to, Sarah's there. She can help you grab some. So we want you to call Pat Seabury every day. Every day you're going to call Pat Seabury. Call his Worthington offices, call his Washington offices, call Senator Portman. Keep them on the phone. Tell them how you feel about health care, about the importance of having health care and not taking it away, not taking the ACA away. We're in a little bit of a bubble here, people. There are people out there, believe it or not, who have not heard about Indivisible. So, and even if they haven't heard about Indivisible, that's fine, but they don't know how important it is for them to contact their congressman and get involved. And that's why we want you to reach out to a friend. We want you to talk about what you're doing. Mention it at work. Mention it to your family. Mention it to your neighbors. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them that you've written a letter to the editor for the first time in your life. You've written to your congressman for the first time in your life. You've made a call every day. These things are so important, and you have to get out past just these people who already know what you're doing and who already agree with you. So that's our second ask, and that's on your sheet there. Call every day, text, or reach out to somebody new. Go to Congressman Seabury's office. Raise your hand if you've been to his office. Now, isn't that not amazing? That is so amazing. Keep your hands up for a second. Anyone who's planning to go soon, check out someone who's been recently, and you can get some tips from them during like our intermission or at the end. You can get some tips from them on how to talk to Seabury, what things to mention, and you don't even need to. Thank you guys. You don't need. You can have an appointment with him, which is great and important. You can also just drop in on his offices anytime. You don't need an appointment. He is your congressman. You are paying for his staff. You're paying for their health care. You're paying for their pensions. You're paying for the whole 9 yards. So they work for you, and you can go and you can bring your friends and you can bring your neighbors, and they have to talk to you, and that's really important. And they do say that a personal visit has more impact than just an email or a call. So we really want you to do that. That's important. We have a rally every Thursday at noon at Seabury's office, and what we do is we take postcards that people have written and we bring them into the office. We have a time outside where we stand with our signs. Cars go by and honk, and it's awesome, and then we go inside and we deliver the postcards. If you are having postcard parties, which we hope you are, every week you're getting together with your friends and you're writing postcards, you can drop them off with us or meet us there, and we will deliver those postcards. Hundreds of postcards from constituents every week, week after week, going into Seabury's office. It's very effective. It's important. We also take pictures of them, we tweet them, we put them on Facebook. We try to spread the message as much as we can. Another thing, the vote may happen this week, as I said. If it does, if we find out on Tuesday, for example, that the vote will be on Thursday, we're going to have a candlelight vigil Wednesday night before the vote. And we, watch our Facebook page. We'll send out a blast by email, and we'll let you know we're going to be in Congressman Seabury's neighborhood somewhere, and we're going to have our candles. We're going to stand silently and respectfully and solemnly, and we're going to ask, we're going to basically stand and represent the fact that we do not want this taken away from us. We also want you to share your actions today and every day on social media. So we have some hashtags. They're there on your handout. At some point, they're going to come up on, they're on the side there. So you've got your hashtags on the side there. You can tweet, you can Facebook Live, you can do all these things that you want, and it just duplicates and it expands and it everything that you're doing. So this is really important. We want to be informed, and we want to stand up, and we want to make sure that our congressmen never have the chance to say that they didn't hear from us, they didn't know, they're only hearing from the other side. We have to be citizens and make our views known. So thank you so much, guys. We are doing this because we care about each other and we care about the world, because we love our country, because our country is better than this. It's better than this. Yeah. Better than this. And here to lead us in song, a patriotic song about how much better than this our country is the Vocal Resistance Choir. Thank you.
Hello, neighbors. Can you hear me? There we go. So we are Vocal Resistance. Our motto is we sing out for justice, empathy, and peace. And so we are, as Mia alluded to, we believe protest is patriotic. So we're going to have you join us in America the Beautiful. I believe we are actually going to do 3 whole verses, right? One song, 3 verses. 1, 2, and 4 for those of you who have memorized the verses. If you have the words, you may notice there's an extra word or 2 slipped in verse 1 and 3. So we're going to tune up because we care, and we'll be right with you. Joining or booking us.
Thank you so much, guys. Now, I want to introduce Sandy Tejas. Tice? Sorry. That's okay. From Progress, Ohio, who is co-sponsoring this event. Thank you very much. Thank you.
everybody. If you're not familiar with Progress Ohio, I'm very sad about that. We are the state's largest progressive advocacy organization. We've been around for about 11 years, and we engage on a bunch of different issues. Healthcare is one of the key issues that we're working on right now, and I am just so glad to see the Indivisible groups. Before I did what I'm doing now, I was the State House reporter for 25 years, and I have never ever seen more energy, more excitement, and more hope for my state than what I see with the Indivisible groups. Like I said, we engage on a bunch of different issues, and we have a lot of resources that we think can be available to you guys. We have a very active Facebook page and Twitter presence. We're known for our earned and social media, so we host press conferences and we do public events on the ACA. And this year, when we give an annual Progressive Hero Award, and it's the one person that year who's done amazing things as a progressive. And this year, our progressive hero was Connie Schultz. Connie and I work together at the Plain Dealer. We're friends, and she's obviously married to Senator Sherrod Brown. And so Sherrod, who was a previous award winner, gave Connie the award. So they told some nice stories about each other. And one of the people who was at the event came up and introduced himself to Sherrod, and he owns a laundromat. And he said that anybody who's in the laundry business knows that the thing that really gets the dirt out is the agitation. And so our motto at Progress Ohio has always been, we're powered by you, but we think we're going to change it to let's agitate. Okay? Because it's working. It is working. I mean, the ACA repeal was supposed to be on President Trump's desk. The first week, and it's still not there. And it's not there because of people like you. And so it really is important to keep calling and keep writing and keep agitating, because I think that's the only thing that's effective. There are more of us than the other side. They just have better money and they're louder. And I think we're not going to be able to compete with them on the resources, but we have the foot soldiers that we need, and we're louder now, and that's really, really important. I brought a little handout here, and if you want to sign up for some of the things that we have, please do so. We put out an annual or a weekly review every Friday that gets emailed, and we have all the progressive issues that are in the news. We have a uteri watch usually, because our lady parts are always under attack. It's a uterus with eyeballs. It's really cute. We have charter chatter, because we've done all the research on the crummy charter schools, and we're going to continue to do that. We have stuff on redistricting reform. Dick Gunther from Ohio State, he's one of the people who helped us with the legislative redistricting. I understand Dick is going to be talking a little bit later. And I was so excited to hear that you guys were interested in that, because the issues that we care about are not going to get fixed appropriately unless we fix the map. And Pat Teaberry, there's no reason why Franklin County should have 3 districts in them. They chop them up, they put all the Republicans, they make sure that they can maximize their votes. So please stay engaged on that. We're hoping that that's going to be on the ballot relatively soon, and we're going to take care of that. I was supposed to introduce the next speaker, and I see his card with his name on it. I dropped underneath my little chair there. Thank you. His name is Daniel Skinner, and he's going to talk about health policy. He's a professor at Ohio University. And so thank you guys. Sign up for our stuff, and thank you very much for what you do.
Okay, well, the Ohio 12th, the fightin' 12th. These guys don't have a chance with people like you. This is really remarkable. I'm honored to be here today to talk a little bit about the Republican healthcare plan. It's great to see the media here, the real media. Doing their real job, which is great. We like stuff. None of that junk. We're making real news here, and you guys, people are noticing. So this is really wonderful. I'm very excited about this. My name is Dan Skinner. I'm an assistant professor of health policy at OU at the medical school in Dublin, the new campus in Dublin.
Hey, Dublin.
Yeah, Dublin. Here it is. Is Dublin in the 12th?
Yeah.
Is that right? All right, hey. D-town up. And I was asked just to kind of talk a little bit about the Republican plan, and I'm going to try to keep it brief so we have some time if there are any questions or comments people want to make. I do have one of these kind of boring academic little presentation thingies, but we might skip through some of it. But I want to start first with some really good news, right? Because not only do we have a possible vote on a replacement bill for the Affordable Care Act this week that's likely to begin to end this attempt to undo the gains that we've made with the Affordable Care Act, but we have to say a quick happy birthday to the ACA, 7 years. And I mention that because I think it's really important to note that as we've been watching the Republicans find a way, stumbling through the dark to try to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, they are really constrained. Right? You look at the discussion, and we can thank President Obama for a minute to notice that the discussion's been changed. There are all sorts of things that the Republicans are paying lip service to, at a minimum. And I mean lip service because a lot of it's not real. But they feel forced to talk about things that they weren't talking about before, and that is something to just remember as we go forward here. A few of those things, right? Okay, they talk about pre-existing conditions. Well, the American Health Care Act that they're putting forward this week, it doesn't really do that, but at least they feel like they can't just lie outright. They have to use the language. Okay, covering young adults up to age 26. This has helped a lot of people. This is a good thing. Okay, guaranteeing availability and renewability of coverage. The American Health Care Act actually does quite good stuff if we were to dial it back 10 years compared to where we were. Not as good as the ACA, but nice to know that they're noticing. Capping out-of-pocket expenditures, similar. Okay? Sorry, I have to keep turning around. I don't have a little monitor in front of me. And of course, banning underwriting based on health status. This is a discussion that was started by the ACA, and it's a discussion that we're going to have to continue when we pick up the pieces of this disastrous attempt that they're now in the middle of trying to put through. And that's the good news. They're not doing a very good job. Can we go to the next slide? So you all know the numbers, right? And here's just a little bit of a snapshot of where the projections are looking, right? This is where we got to with the ACA. This is where they want to take it back with the American Health Care Act that's being voted on this week. Just to remember, I mean, that's a huge rise in the uninsured rates. And as I'm going to mention at the very end of my presentation, this was a key promise of then candidate Trump to say, no, everybody's going to be covered, everybody's going to be covered. So we can start to think about what it means for President Trump to be undoing some of his key campaign promises. And we've got to remember what those promises were, so that when we talk to people who supported President Trump and who might now be on the fence, who might now be at risk of losing their health care, we can point out this distinction and start to drive that wedge, which is what good activists do. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So what does the AHCA do? Well, okay, it takes away some of the important parts of the Affordable Care Act, such as the mandate that everybody buy health insurance and that offers subsidies to help them to do that. Okay. It gets rid of a whole slew of taxes that were designed to have positive impacts on our population's health while also funding the increased access to more Americans. The so-called Cadillac tax for these large, kind of bloated healthcare plans, and the tanning tax. I always put that up there as one of my favorites. But seriously, it's a serious thing. The American Dermatological Association knows the tax on tanning salons is a really important thing. This is a major cause of cancer. Okay, so Medicare, the Medicare tax on those earning over $200,000. Right? This was another way in which we asked people of means to pay just a little bit more to be able to fund this major expansion and access for Americans without health care. And I just, listening to an interview with Representative Joseph Kennedy this morning, I think he nailed it. The AHCA is a tax bill disguised as health care. And I think that's really important. It's a good framing. So the GOP are going to claim, well, look, all these uninsured people who are going to, they're going to lose their health insurance, they're doing it by choice because they're opting to not have health insurance. Now, there's a lot to say that we can't possibly get into. I'd love to join all of you afterwards and talk a little bit about it. But so for the GOP, choice is the fundamental value, and they talk about freedom as the ability to make bad choices. Okay, fine, fair. But let's go to the next slide and think about what our response might need to be. What happens when these people show up in emergency rooms? Okay, now, we might talk about personal responsibility and these people didn't have health insurance. So what? I am very proud to live in a country that still has this EMTALA bill, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act of 1986, which is the bill that means when you come into an emergency room, no matter what, you will get care. Now, we still live in a country, our social contract might be fraying, but we live in a country that still wants to have a basic bottom floor like that. So these people are still going to show up in emergency rooms, and then what happens to that care? Who pays for that? Right? So much for personal responsibility, that gets socialized. That's a form of socialized medicine for sure. Okay? And not only that, hospitals. So if you notice who our strange bedfellows are in this defense of the Affordable Care Act, the American Hospital Association, the Ohio Hospital Association, they oppose repeal because their uncompensated care is way down. They have become very much dependent on Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion in particular, but the Affordable Care Act in general. So here's a good question, I think. Why is a government penalty for uninsurance called tyranny when the government penalizes you? But when you let an insurance company charge you up to 30% for having your insurance lapse, that's called freedom. I don't get it. So, in that regard, we have a public to private shift, and I want to start to think about the ways in which the American Health Care Act is really just a financial transfer from monies that would be paid to the government to expand access to health insurance to companies that are now going to be able to reap the benefits for people who lapse in their health insurance for reasons that we can only imagine are not of their own choosing. Okay. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So the GOP is going to claim that the ACA, quality controls drove up costs, these bloated plans, all this kind of stuff, and that there's not enough personal responsibility in these plans. Right? In response, and here's really one of the crux, one of the key pieces of the AHCA, it offers cheaper insurance products that ask payers to pay more cost sharing, higher premiums, things like this. Go back to President Trump when he was candidate Trump and think about what he was saying. That was not what the vision looked like. In fact, he promised lower premiums. He promised better health care, lower premiums, and everybody's covered. Next slide, please. So here's our response, I think. Reducing costs by offering garbage plans is not good policy. Right? Americans can't. Americans can't withstand more cost sharing. Cost sharing meaning co-pays and premiums and things of this nature. Okay, now the AHCA does save some money, but it does it by keeping people out of the system. There is a value fight going on here. Budgets are moral documents, and that's one of the key points that I think we need to keep driving home. This is not just about balance sheets. So, of course, when you remove sicker, generally older, certainly poorer Americans from the insurance pools, yeah, money's going to go down. But you know what's going to go up is the level of pain on the populace. And that's why I really do think that this is about values, and this is about what kind of country we want to live in, not just kind of what healthcare looks like. Okay, so again, the AHCA may be actually a tax document that is masquerading as health policy, but in this case, I think that it's a health policy bill that's actually driving a wedge between two different value visions. Next slide, please. So, a couple more points, and then I'll wrap up and we can have a conversation. The AHCA slashes Medicaid funding by almost $900 billion. This is based on the Congressional Budget Office's recent report. Okay, it's over 10 years, but still. Primarily in the healthcare movement, and we're really concerned here about what's going to happen with mental health care and behavioral health services. I'm going to come back to this in a quick moment. But at a minimum, what it does is it limits funding for emergencies, right? And states are going to be the ones that are going to have to ultimately deal with this issue when the changes in Medicaid take place. Can we go on to the next one, please? Couple quick points. It's always good to have some data at your fingertips. More than 50% of births in Ohio and in America are funded through Medicaid. So you love children, you care about children. Well, how do we square that circle? Right? The opioid epidemic, as Governor Kasich himself knows, we don't know what we're going to do. The Medicaid expansion has been a critical piece of keeping hospitals solvent, of keeping programs solvent so that we can start to tackle this problem in a systematic way. You know, I'm guessing there aren't a lot of people who voted for Governor Kasich in this particular room. Maybe there are. Okay? But I think it's really important when I talk to indivisible groups, I want to make sure we don't just go after Pat Tiberi for not showing up, but that we thank Governor Kasich when he does. All right? And we need to build allies across the aisle. We need to recognize when people who we might not agree with generally do the right thing and support them, because our governor needs support right now. Okay? So just real briefly, I want to also just hit this one last point, which is kind of more of a detailed policy area. But the ability to access health care is the language that President Trump and Paul Ryan are using. And I want you to pay attention to this weaselly language. Okay? It's not the same as having insurance. It's not the same as having coverage. It means you could, in some world, be able to purchase health care. Okay, now, what about pre-existing conditions? Well, the AHCA does allow insurance companies, as I mentioned, to penalize payers when their coverage lapses. And that's a 30% premium that can then last for a year. So when you hear continuous coverage, which is the language, that's not the same as guaranteed issue, which means everybody gets health insurance. Nobody can turn you away. Right? There are lots of mechanisms in there that are ultimately going to cost people, they're going to punish people when their insurance lapses. And we need to just listen very carefully to that language and not let them conflate, because they're trying to pull something on us in using these different terms. And they're trying to get us to think they're the same thing, and they're not. So who are the winners? Healthier, wealthier Americans, so you've heard this, and the insurance companies. I mean, there's a lot of mechanisms by which we can see this dynamic at work in the AHCA. What are the losers? Well, the ACA's emphasis on wellness and its preventative mechanisms are really going to take a hit. Okay? And just even from a fiscal conservative perspective, that's a smart thing to do in terms of how we use scarce health care dollars. Women, of course, and this is on news, I see a lot of women in the audience here. Women are once again the targets of this bill, very clearly. They will pay the largest price, especially poor women. And defunding Planned Parenthood is huge, but it's not the entire game. Finally, and I think this is where we come back to Governor Kasich, if you get a couple minutes with Congressman Tiberi or Senator Portman, ask them, how would you be behaving if you were the governor of a state? Because these people, and these Congress members, don't have to worry about balancing a state budget. The opioid crisis doesn't come back onto their desk. Right? And I think they act in very different ways as a result, and I think we need to push them on this and say, you're behaving like somebody who is not actually representing a state or thinking about statewide issues. And that's really, really important. So states are big losers in here. Right now, when we look at the block grants, per capita caps, all this kind of stuff, states are not fiscally going to be able to respond to crises in the Trump vision. And that is an important dynamic for us to pay attention to when we're talking with folks in advocacy. I think I should have one more slide. We can go through the next one. Okay. So here's just a couple quick points from my perspective. The American Health Care Act is going to be devastating, right? In many, many ways. But the GOP is going to have to own it, and we're going to have to make sure they own it. Trump's a beautiful master, a master of branding. Right? You can imagine him just like putting Trump on the ACA and saying good day and then hoping people don't notice. It wouldn't be so bad. I would support it. But we've got to educate people. We've got to talk with people. And I think we've all got to become a little bit more focused and smart in how we talk about healthcare so that it's not just slogans, but that we actually get into some of the policy nitty-gritty. And I would be happy to be a resource if I can. And also, and I think this is really important, we've got to be there for those people who are about to get screwed. We've got to help them. Yes. And this brings me to the last slide, which is a lot of these people voted for Trump. These are our brothers and sisters. These are our neighbors. And we've got to go and talk to these people. We've got to start working with them. Right? We've got to learn to communicate with them. And we've got to keep in mind that these people also are starting to watch the very vision that they thought they were voting for unravel. And I think some empathy is going to be really, really important. Not just to winning the next election, but to building a more empathetic state with a better health system. So thanks very much, and if there can ever be any help, please let me know. We have time for one question, I'm told.
What's your name again?
My name is Dan Skinner. Yeah. and I'd be happy to give you cards or anything. This gentleman here has had his hand up for quite a while, so yes.
Longer slides, slides back, uncritically repeated one of the GOP claims to the AHCA, and that is that by driving poorer people and older people out of the rolls of the insured, that it's going to lower health care costs. That is a lie. When you do not treat people who have high blood pressure, when you do not treat people with diabetes, you end up with higher health care costs. They will ultimately end up requiring much more expensive care. It is a lie to say that you're going to lower costs.
Well, okay, so let me just clarify one quick point on that then. Because I was talking about the individual markets. And those people are going to get driven into social programs, and that cost is going to be socialized. I'm guessing is kind of what you're saying, which I fully agree with.
Cost shifting.
Cost shifting. Or neoliberalism. Let's
do one more.
One more. How about one more? Here, Cass.
My daughter's in the service industry, which means she feeds everybody, she clears their tables, she goes home at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. She only got health insurance through the Affordable Care Act that was reasonable. Prior to that, she went to Planned Parenthood. Today at the dinner table, she asked me, she's 32 years old, and she asked me, Mom, if I lose my Obamacare, I can't go back to Planned Parenthood if it's defuncting. What are my choices? I cannot afford other health care. And that is what we're looking at with a lot of the people, especially in that industry, who takes care of all of us no matter what they do.
Here, here. Okay, well, thank you very much. I know you want to keep moving along on schedule, but I have some business cards, and I'd be happy to chat with anybody and be in touch.
Thank you, Professor Skinner. So we have learned that we can't let the ACH pass, can we?
No.
All right, so what are we going to do about it? Well, we as Indivisible are going to call T-Berry. We are going to visit his office, and we are going to ask our friends and family to do the same. So what I'm going to ask is what each of you are going to do as part of Indivisible. Because if we're going to do this, we need everybody involved. So I would like for you to take just a moment to think about what you are committed to doing this week. And your options are call Congressman T-Berry every day. Explain to him what's wrong with the AHCA and why we can't let it pass. You can drop by his office and visit. You don't need an appointment. You can drop by and talk to one of his staff members. Again, raise your hand if you've stopped by or talked to his staff or Congressman T-Berry. You can also come to our rally on Thursday at noon where we hang out for an hour. We protest, we hold up signs, we're very peaceful, and then we head into his office and we deliver all the postcards that you all are filling out, and usually we read them so that his staff know what's on the postcards. They're really cool videos if you have never seen them. And then we'll also have the candlelight vigil probably on Wednesday. So what are you committed to doing? Take a moment and turn to your neighbor and tell them what you are committed to doing this week. And if you're an introvert and you won't talk, then you can put it on Twitter. Have a hand up in the back. What are you committed to doing? So it sounds like we've got some great plans being made. Folks are committed to doing something. And now you have someone who knows what you committed to do and can check on you, right? So we did have a question about, I I already call T-Berry every day. Does that really make a difference? Should I keep calling? What do you guys think? Should I keep calling every day? So why?
Keep them busy.
So they never forget.
Keep them busy. They count. We have the hash marks. They know. What else? They ignore us if we shut up, right? If we stop calling, they're going to be like, woo! We don't have to listen to those people anymore. What else?
They also claim that they have not heard people who want to support
Yep.
maintaining a...
So they haven't heard us yet. So we need to call every day. I will tell you, I know it's not fun every day, right? But what keeps me going is I feel like at some points we're fighting an unending battle, but we've only been doing this, for, 8 weeks at this point? Right? But I look at the civil rights activists from every generation for inspiration. They didn't give up. When they had to walk, when they had to march, when, Congressman Lewis walked across the bridge and got his skull cracked open, did he stop? No. So if, I'm a little uncomfortable calling on the phone, I'm going to suck it up and call on the phone again, right? And go out to the office and talk to people. But when you are tired, when you just can't take it anymore, take a day off, rest, but don't quit.
That's right.
Please don't quit. The rest of us will cover for you on that one day. If we all do it on different days, we're okay, right? We just all can't take the same day off, but we need you. This is our country, and we're going to take it back.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, the Candlelight Vigil, we don't have a location yet, but we will post it on Facebook. We will send it out via the email newsletter, the daily call to action. If you haven't signed up for those, there's people out front who can do that. But we're thinking Wednesday night. And as a person who will be affected by the change in the ACA, I would really appreciate being able to be with a group of people on that night.
Do you know if the other districts in Franklin County are doing a vigil also?
I don't know. But we'll find out, and they're certainly welcome to come to ours as well. And we'll push it out to District 3 and District 15. But I think it would be great if we're all there to show support to people who are going to be hurt by this.
How about the state house?
We'll certainly keep that as an option. Yes. All right, so one last piece of housekeeping thing about the postcards that you have. If you have written a message on the back of the postcard, we are going to scan these and put them online. If it has your name on it, we will not do it unless you have checked the box on the front. All right, so we're going to fight the AHCA with everything we have this week.
Yes.
But that's not it, right? We have to start thinking long-term, too. And so short-term, ACA, long-term, we're going to think about how we can have fairer districts so that we don't have a gerrymandered district and have a representative who can ignore us, right?
Yeah.
So Professor Gunther is here to talk to us about how we can work to fix that.
Good afternoon, everyone. If you think this fight over the ACA is protracted, I want to point out that I've been fighting against gerrymandering for 12 years. We've had our share of defeats, but we also secured issue 1, which is going to help enormously in making our legislature much more representative than it has been over previous years. As soon as we're ready to go, here we go. Gerrymandering has done serious damage to the quality of democracy in this country. And with every round of redistricting, the improvement of computer technology has made this worse. What I'd like to do in the few minutes that follow is first describe what gerrymandering is. Second, explain where it came from. Third, explain how it works. And finally, point out how you can help end gerrymandering in Ohio. This appears not to be working, so we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. Gerrymandering is basically stacking the deck against candidates in elections by drawing district lines in such a manner as to guarantee the victory of one candidate and the defeat of another. And if you think that is hyperbole, wait until you see some of the data that I will be presenting to you. Now, where did gerrymandering come from? First, we have Governor Elbridge Gerry, who was the governor of Massachusetts 202 years ago, who drew a district map that looked like a salamander. Hence, they refer to this as the gerrymander. We've been mispronouncing his name for 202 years, I should point out. But that map was ugly, but not as ugly as gerrymandering itself. Now, how does gerrymandering work? There are two basic techniques. One of them is packing. It is basically taking the supporters of one political party and packing them into huge supermajority districts, so that effectively you are denying those votes to neighboring areas that might have elected a second candidate from that particular party. You sit back and you wonder, why is it that a Republican gerrymander created a Democratic district, the 11th Congressional District in the Cleveland area, with an 83% Democratic majority? Certainly the incumbent, Marcia Fudge, enjoys that margin of victory, but the problem is that means that many of those votes are wasted, and they otherwise could have gone to the election of candidates in neighboring districts. The other technique is cracking, and that is one in which you take a relatively homogeneous community and you splinter it among a variety of congressional districts. That's been the case of Franklin County for far too long. In fact, prior to the latest gerrymander, this county, which is now solidly Democratic, constantly elected 3 Republican members of Congress, with only one exception, 2 years with Mary Jo Kilroy winning. Now, the winning side in this crooked practice will use the ability to draw lines to efficiently distribute their supporters. What that means is you want to have districts that are about 55% in favor of your party. You don't want to have it too close, because, God forbid, that might actually make the district competitive. But on the other hand, you don't want to waste votes by going much beyond 55%. Now, the best illustration that I've seen of how gerrymandering works, and this interesting demonstration of how powerful this technique is something that the Washington Post published recently. And it basically takes 50 people, this is their geographical pattern of residence, 60% of them vote for the blue party, 40% for the red party. Now, depending upon how you draw the lines, you can come up with 3 radically different outcomes. One of them is perfectly fair, in which you would elect 3 blue representatives and 2 red representatives. Again, that would be 60-40 in accord with the vote. The problem with that district is that it is not compact. It stretches for a long distance, and that's not something we'd like to see. This one is one in which the majority party can take all the seats. You can see that even though the blue party has only 60% of the vote, it wins all 5 of the seats in that particular area. But this is the grand prize winner. This is where you pull the rabbit out of a hat, and the loser becomes the winner. You can actually create a system in which the party that has only 40% of the vote can get 60% of the seats, and vice versa. Now, this has done damage to the quality of democracy in America in several ways. One of them is that it does not fairly represent the preferences of the voters. Let me just give you a couple of examples of this. First, in 2012, the Democratic candidates nationwide received 1.4 million more votes than the Republican candidates nationwide, and yet the Republican Party retained its majority of 16 seats. Once again, you win by 1.4 million votes, and you lose a majority by a margin of 16 seats. In the case of Ohio, it's equally outrageous. In that same year, Democratic candidates for the State House of Representatives received 55,000 more votes than Republican candidates, and yet the Republicans increased their majority to a supermajority of 60 out of 99 seats. Once again, the losing party magically becomes the winner. Now, there is another in this series of ways in which gerrymandering damages the quality of democracy, and that is that it creates safe seats for candidates where they are enjoying such large margins of victory that it's impossible to vote them out of office. In 2016, let's just take a look at votes for the Ohio House of Representatives. Only 4 out of 99 seats were decided by margins of 10% or less. And 10% is not really competitive. I mean, that would require a wave election in order to get any of those 4 out of office. But then you turn your attention to some of the other districts, and you find that 44 of those 99 seats were decided by margins of victory of 40% or more. There is no way that you can vote out of office a candidate with a 40% margin of victory. But even worse, in 25 districts, the margins are so lopsided that candidates from one party did not even present themselves on the ballot. That's like elections in the former Soviet Union, where you show up and there'd be only one name on the ballot. That is not democracy, and that is not what this country is about. Now, this has a couple of knock-on effects that really do deal with the quality of democracy. One of them that I just mentioned is accountability. You can't hold them accountable. In addition, if you would switch the slide, the lack of competitiveness in the general election means that you can take for granted the fact that you're going to be elected, except in the primary election, where you might actually have a real competitor. And what this means is that the incumbents in many of these seats are determined not by the general election anymore, but rather by the primary. And what we know about primary elections is that a very small percentage of voters participate, and those that do tend to be more ideologically extreme than those who show up in general elections. What that has done progressively, both in the state of Ohio and nationwide, is contribute to increased polarization of American politics, and that has not been healthy for American democracy. Finally, the representation of communities. The representation of communities is made a mockery by some of these districts. And in fact, let me just show you in a minute what some of these look like, but they involve splintering real communities, breaking them up so that there's not one voice that speaks for that community, but also smothering the voters in that particular community with others from very, very far afield. And let me give you a couple of examples. Here we have our awful map.
We already know this.
And there are a couple of noteworthy districts. Some of them are really amazing, like the Snake on the Lake, the 9th district in the north, that runs all the way from Toledo to Cleveland. Anybody know why that district was drawn in that manner? That's right. To put Dennis Kucinich in the same district as Marcy Kaptur so that one of them will lose. And that was Dennis Kucinich in this particular case. Now, let's take a look at a couple of other districts. This is Jim Jordan's district, and it runs almost from the Indiana border into Lorain County and basically greater metropolitan Cleveland. Now, we don't have to go that far away to see a true outrage.
We don't.
Our neighboring district, which is where I live, the 15th, is a real hoot. This one used to be the upper quarter of Franklin County, Union County, and Madison County. And that was compact, and it was actually a competitive district. We were able to elect Mary Jo Kilroy. Now, look at this district. It runs from Franklin, Madison, Pickaway, Fairfield, Perry, Morgan, Athens, Hocking, Vinton, Fayette, Clinton, and Ross counties. Who is being represented in a district like that? Well, the person who actually does represent that district lives in Upper Arlington, so he's a suburbanite. Therefore, if you happen to be a resident of rural Clinton County, it's hard to see him as your defender. But certainly, since he represents a party that is not favored by the majority of those in Franklin County, he's not representing the urban population either. No one is served by this corrupt practice of gerrymandering. Now, what's the root of this problem? It is that politicians draw their own lines. And this is done in two different ways. One for the state legislature and one for the General Assembly, one for the U.S. Congress. For the state legislature, the so-called apportionment board would draw the district lines. That would be the governor, the auditor, the secretary of state, and one Democrat and one Republican from the legislature. What this meant was that whoever would win two of those three statewide races could draw whatever lines they want. And we know how that was done. It was done by Team Boehner, as they called themselves, who actually described their working environment not as the halls of the legislature, but rather as the bunker. And we know this because we have all of their email exchanges that we got from a public records request. There were very few constraints on the state legislative district boundary drawing practice, although there were some that were built into the Constitution. But I'll come back to that in a moment. Even worse is the drawing of district lines for Congress. This is done by the legislature, and you say, well, wait a minute, the governor could veto this. The problem is the legislature currently has a veto-proof supermajority in the hands of one political party. Now, there was a suit that was brought to the Supreme Court in 2012 by OSU law professor Charlie Wilson, and it was based upon the fact that the Ohio Constitution states that you are supposed to minimize the splitting of counties and cities and townships. And Charlie documented the fact that there were 194 splits that went way beyond that necessary in order to create maps for the General Assembly. And we thought this was going to be a winner. Instead, the Supreme Court ruled against this particular complaint. And not only did it refuse to deal with this particular issue, but listen to the language that was built into the opinion issued by the court. In 2012, the Ohio Supreme Court ruled that the Constitution of Ohio, quote, does not require political neutrality, or for that matter, politically competitive districts, or representational fairness in the apportionment of the board's creation of state legislative districts. Now, under those circumstances, we had no alternative but to change the Ohio Constitution. And we did that once. First, with regard to issue 1, and I want to take the time right now in order to go through that, but we altered the process of drawing state legislative boundaries, both by changing the nature of the board that draws the lines and making it necessary to have 2 votes from the minority party in order to pass a plan that would be valid for 10 years. Now, this doesn't go into effect until 2022, but we think it's going to help. In addition, there were a number of criteria and specific step-by-step procedures that are supposed to be followed in drawing district lines that we believe will make for much more competitive districts in the future. But the problem is, this passed with overwhelming support. It passed the Senate by a vote of 28-1. By the way, the vote took place at 4:08 in the morning after the last day of the lame duck session of the Senate for that legislative session. It passed in a concurring vote in the House by 81-7, and it was passed by the voters of Ohio in November of 2015 by a margin of 71.5%. That is a huge, smashing victory that indicates that voters of Ohio are sick and tired of gerrymandering. Now there's a problem. There's a problem, and that is it did not include the reform of the process of drawing congressional district boundaries. That at present remains in the hands of the legislature, and it would be the same heavily gerrymandered legislature that we currently have, which gives a supermajority to one party. Now, why are we not moving forward on congressional redistricting reform? Every major newspaper in the state of Ohio, and especially the Columbus Dispatch, which has been very, very supportive of us, is in favor of congressional redistricting reform, as are all of the recent governors of Ohio. Kasich, Strickland, Taft, the late George Voinovich, Dick Celeste, as have all of the statewide Republican elected officials, Kasich, Husted, Yost, Mandel, and DeWine. So why have we not moved forward on this? We have an answer that came out of the mouth of Speaker Rosenberger. He said, before we move on congressional redistricting reform, let's wait until we see how issue 1 actually plays out in redrawing state legislative boundaries. What's the problem here, folks? That won't happen until 2022. And what would be the next opportunity to redraw district boundaries fairly? 2032. Now, the Akron Beacon Journal correctly described this as Speaker Rosenberger's 17-year plan. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to wait 17 years before I see justice in drawing district boundaries. Now, we have tried, until very recently, to negotiate with the same individuals who I negotiated with over issue 1 on the Republican side to move forward on congressional redistricting reform, and that has gone nowhere. Therefore, the Fair Districts Ohio Coalition, which includes the League of Women Voters, Common Cause, Progress Ohio, and a number of others, are proposing a constitutional initiative. And you have a copy of the actual text of that that we passed out, and if you don't have a copy, you'll find some on the desk outside. Now, what do we propose to do to bring about an end to this corrupt practice? Number 1, we will use the Ohio Redistricting Commission as the body that would draw the lines, and use the same rules that applied under issue 1. That is, you need 2 votes from the minority party in order to pass any plan. Now, unlike what was proposed by issue 1 and added to the Constitution, this does not just involve a 4-year map instead of a 10-year map. We're silent on that. Why? Because if they don't draw the map according to the Constitution, which would need 2 votes of the minority party, it would go to a federal court. And let me assure you, if you want to see a pale expression suddenly flash across the face of a politician, talk about having courts draw district boundaries. It's something that is very unpopular. More importantly, we've changed a number of the rules involved with how you go about drawing these district boundaries. First, every citizen of Ohio is free to submit a plan. And we know this works because in 2009 and 2010, we had statewide competitions in which ordinary citizens were given software and given data, and they drew plans, 67 of them, every one of which is better than the map that we currently have. And you have to be a rocket scientist to participate in this little game. One of my undergraduate students in one of my classes submitted one of the maps, and it was pretty good. So that's one point. But more importantly, the criteria that we are building into the Ohio Constitution, if this passes, would make gerrymandering impossible. First, these are the criteria in order of priority. One of them, obviously compliance with the Constitution and the voting rights laws that deny the opportunity of systematically underrepresenting minorities. Beyond that, we have a simple statement. No congressional district plan shall be drawn to favor or disfavor a political party or candidates. Now that's language that comes from the Florida Constitution. It was put there by an initiative, a citizens initiative that the League of Women Voters set forth. And this has been used by the Florida Supreme Court to rule 3 different maps invalid. So this simple statement can be a powerful weapon. The problem is if you rely on the courts, as in the case of Florida, it can bounce back and forth for years without really being resolved. Therefore, we have a number of straitjackets that we would put around the hands of the map drawers. One of them is that you must minimize the splitting of counties, cities, and townships in that order. Now, I want to point out that our current congressional map, which you previously saw, included 54 splits of counties. And there are 7 counties in Ohio that are split 3 or more times. Cuyahoga and Summit counties are split 4 different ways. This is the worst possible example of cracking, and we would prevent that. Representational fairness is going to be built in using language that we put in the Constitution through Issue 1. Now the problem with Issue 1 is that that earlier statement about no plan favoring a particular party and this representational fairness clause are in the so-called aspirational goals of the Ohio Constitution. So it's only if you violate some of the splitting rules that it comes into effect. In our proposal, these go right up front, and they would be the highest priority criteria that you have to take into consideration in drawing lines. And so what we want to have is something in which the leaning of the seats that are drawn corresponds to the voting preferences of Ohio citizens as expressed in elections over the previous decade. And we know this is easy to do. You can create a partisan political index. And if a plan deviates too much from that index, it should be regarded as unconstitutional and it would have to be redone. In addition, congressional districts must be or should be compact. Rather than those crazy districts that span several hundred miles from one end of Ohio to another. I didn't even point to the 6th district, which runs from Youngstown to Portsmouth. How can you even possibly visit all of your district? It takes, what, about 10 hours to drive from one end of that district to the other. We would have the requirement that districts would be compact. Now, I want to point out that nearly all of the language that we would put into the Constitution is already there. But we're just moving it from the aspirational goals to a higher status. And we're also protecting counties, which Issue 1 did not. And the reason is obvious. When you're trying to divide 88 counties into 99 House districts, you really can't protect counties. You have to split counties. But when you're doing 15 districts, which is what we will have after the next census, into 88 counties, you better protect counties or you're not going to be preventing gerrymandering at all. Now, we have run a number of simulations of this particular proposal, and it works. Rather than the current imbalance of 12 districts, 12 Republican districts versus 4 Democratic districts, none of which are competitive, by the way, we would have no more than 9 districts that would favor one party and no fewer than 6 districts that would favor a party. And most likely it would work out to be about 8 to 7, except when one party or the other is having a particularly good year. In addition, in contrast with our current map that has no competitive districts, we would have about 6 competitive districts within the range of 50 to 55%. That's real competition, which we currently lack. Finally, we were able to create this map with only 9 splits, 5 of them of counties. Compare that to the 54 splits of counties in our current map. The bottom line is we have confidence that this particular proposal will work, and it will bring about representational fairness and create a level playing field for both parties. I want to point out that after 12 years of working on this, I'm regarding this as my last chance at bat. And if we fail to do something, what we can argue is, given who dominates the legislature at present, and given that the legislature will draw the congressional district lines, we will have an overwhelmingly one-party delegation in Washington until at least 2032. And that is something that I certainly would not be pleased to see. Now, what can we do, and what can you do to help bring about an end to this corrupt practice? One of them is that we're in the early stages of this campaign, and we are desperately short of money. We know that in the last campaign, they threw $8 million at us. We're anticipating that they probably throw $20 million against us this time. We can't go into this campaign without financial resources. If you would like to contribute, please do. And there are a couple of ways of doing that. One of them is right here. If you happen to have your checkbook, if you would like to write a check to the League of Women Voters and then put down in the subject line in the lower left-hand portion, Fair Districts Campaign, I will personally carry this tomorrow to the League's office, and we will put this to good use. Then you could go to our website, which is fairdistrictsohio.org, and there are various instructions. You can see that in the handout that I distributed earlier on as well. And at least for this next week, you can contribute through the League of Women Voters. We hope to have our own PAC put together and our own website with our own contribution link ready to go within a week or so. So if you want to wait until that time, stay tuned. And I'm hoping that your newsletter will announce that this is live and that this would be a way of contributing to our campaign. Now, what we want to do as well in the future is engage in crowdfunding. We know that this works, and this is brand new, just in this election cycle, that it's actually made a difference. But, you know, Jill Stein raised $3 million for a recount, as if she was close enough to win in a recount, in just a couple of days. We know this technique works, and this is one where around this country, everyone has an interest in creating a fair and representative Congress.
That's right.
So if you will, at a certain point when we have this ready to go, we're going to send out a template that what we would like is if you could forward this to your friends, your family, your relatives, all over the United States to see if they would be willing to contribute to making the American Congress fairly representative of the American people for a change. Now, very soon, we're going to be into the signature gathering phase. The first round of that is a quick 1,000 signatures to file with the Attorney General, which we hope to do, I'm hoping, this month. And after that, we have the more daunting task of collecting 305,000 valid signatures. Many of you have participated in this in the past, and frankly, in my experience, it turned out to be enormously rewarding. It was lots of fun, especially when you go to festivals of various kinds that pop up in late spring and early summer. Please, at that point, if you would like to volunteer your services, log on to our website and click the volunteer button, and we can definitely put you to work in a way that will be very, very effective in ending this corrupt practice of gerrymandering. And then finally, when we really move into the decisive parts of the campaign, letters to the editor would be greatly appreciated. But most importantly, talk to your friends, neighbors, relatives, co-workers about how important fair representation is and how and why gerrymandering needs to be brought to an end. In my professional life, I'm the international coordinator for the Comparative National Elections Project. We've done 47 national election surveys in 26 countries, including Russia and Iran. And so we've got lots of data, and we've tested a couple of crucial points. What is the most effective way of changing people's mind and getting them to vote in a particular way? Face-to-face contact with someone they know. And what I would urge you to do as we move into the campaign is spread the word about this campaign so that we can finally win this one and bring about fair representation of Ohio in the United States Congress. Thank you very much.
Here today. We are going to do a couple of real quick things right now. I want to take some pictures of everybody with their signs before you all leave. And I also want to say, if Professor Skinner and Professor Gunther would be willing to stay and come up here, if people have questions for them when we're done, we're going to have them available for a question and answer. And I want to make sure that everyone has checked the boxes on their postcards and that they put them in the baskets out there. You can donate to us because we had to rent the space and do some printing if you have a few dollars with you. We want to make sure that you are staying in touch with us, that you sign up to get our newsletter. There are computers out there to sign up. Also, if you're not on Facebook and you want to get a daily call to action, you can sign up to do that out there as well. Our Facebook page is a great place to just kind of see what's going on, get inspired by some of the amazing things which everyone is doing. I am continuously inspired by all the things that people are doing out there. So don't stop. Write your postcards. Come to T. Berry's office with us on Thursday for the ACA birthday. Come to our vigil. Help knock doors and talk to your neighbors for fair districts. It's so important. It's the only way that we're going to really improve our democracy going forward. Stay in touch with us. I want to take a couple of pictures. If you guys want to hold signs, if anyone else wants to come up and take some pictures, I'd love that. And if your question, you want to hey. Hold on one second.
There you go. Let's go.
All right, let's have a shout. Where's Pat?
Where's Pat?
Save our ACA!
Save our ACA!
Great, thank you. All right, thank you so much. Question?
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I called T. Berry to ask about the town hall that he didn't show up at, and the very nice person at the office said that he was planning a televised town hall for us to interact with him. Do we know when that is, so we can actually show up and talk?
No, he had a telephone town hall, but strangely enough, he didn't call any of us, even though many of us had registered. I don't know about a televised one, but those things are usually very manipulated. They kind of pick people, so if we hear anything about it, we will let you know. But he did have a telephone one, but none of us, literally nobody was called. Yeah, real quick. Well, he doesn't have to be there. Usually when you're dropping by, you're just seeing one of his staff members. You can call and get an appointment to meet with him. That is possible. But you can also go and talk to his staff members. Yeah.
What's the timetable for getting this initiative on the ballot? Is this for 2018?
2017.
2017. 2017, yeah.